The United States has a long-standing tradition of a two-party political system, with the Democratic and Republican parties dominating the national landscape. However, the evolution of these modern parties and the establishment of a robust two-party system was a gradual process marked by shifts, rivalries, and the occasional emergence of third-party movements. In the early days of the American Republic, political parties were not an anticipated feature of the new democratic system. In fact, many of the founding fathers, including George Washington, warned against the formation of parties, fearing they could lead to divisiveness and factionalism. However, the ratification debate over the U.S. Constitution gave rise to the first partisan split, as the Federalists, led by Alexander Hamilton, advocated for a strong central government, while the Anti-Federalists, championed by Thomas Jefferson, favored greater state autonomy. This ideological divide crystallized into the nation's first political parties in the 1790s, with the Federalist Party and the Democratic Republican Party, later known as the Democratic Party. The Federalists, centered around the economic and financial policies of Hamilton, dominated the presidency until the election of Jefferson in 1800. The Democratic Republicans, driven by the agrarian and states' rights ideals of Jefferson and James Madison, then held power for the next quarter century. The 1820s saw a period of relative unity under the presidency of James Monroe and the decline of the Federalist Party. However, this era of good feelings was short-lived, as a new party, the Whigs, emerged in opposition to the policies of President Andrew Jackson and the Democratic Party. The Whigs, led by Henry Clay and Daniel Webster, advocated for economic modernization, a strong banking system, and limits on executive power. This ushered in the second party system, with the Whigs and Democrats vying for control until the 1850s, when the issue of slavery and Western expansion led to the collapse of the Whig Party. The modern Republican Party was founded in 1854, its origins rooted in opposition to the expansion of slavery and the embrace of economic policies that favored industrialization and urbanization. Under the leadership of Abraham Lincoln, the Republicans secured the presidency in 1860, setting the stage for the Civil War and the eventual abolition of slavery. Since then, the Democratic and Republican parties have dominated American politics, with occasional third-party movements challenging but rarely disrupting the two-party dynamic. At the heart of each political party is its platform, a formal statement of principles, policies, and positions on key issues. These platforms are typically drafted and ratified at the party's national convention, drawing input from various stakeholders, interest groups, and elected officials. Individual planks within the platform outline the party's stance on specific topics such as economic policy, social issues, foreign affairs, and more. These platforms serve as a guiding ideology for the party, shaping its messaging, legislative priorities, and the selection of candidates who align with its values. However, parties are not monolithic entities, and internal debates and divisions often arise over the interpretation and prioritization of certain planks or issues. A crucial function of political parties is the nomination of candidates for elected offices, particularly the presidency. Through a series of primary elections and caucuses, registered party members express their preferences for potential nominees, who then vie for the party's nomination at the national convention. This process not only determines the party's standard bearer, but also helps shape and refine the platform for the upcoming general election. Once nominees are selected, parties shift their focus to mobilizing voters and executing campaign strategies. This involves raising funds, organizing grassroots efforts, advertising and outreach initiatives, and coordinating with candidates at all levels of government. Effective party organizations can play a pivotal role in turning out the vote and securing victories for their candidates. Throughout American history, third parties have occasionally emerged to challenge the dominance of the two major parties. These movements often arise from dissatisfaction with the established parties, a desire for alternative policy positions, or a belief that certain issues are being neglected or marginalized. While few third parties have achieved sustained national success, they have sometimes influenced the platforms and policies of the major parties, or faded away once their core issues are addressed or co-opted. In recent decades, concerns have grown over the increasing polarization and partisanship within the American political system. The once relatively centrist Democratic and Republican parties have drifted further apart ideologically, with fewer moderate voices willing to bridge the divide. This has contributed to legislative gridlock, as compromise becomes more elusive and party loyalty often trumps bipartisan cooperation. Critics argue that this hyperpartisanship is detrimental to effective governance and erodes public trust in democratic institutions. There are ongoing calls for electoral reforms, such as changes to the primary process, redistricting practices, and campaign finance regulations, aimed at reducing polarization and encouraging more compromise and moderation. Additionally, the role of money in politics and the influence of special interests and lobbyists on party platforms and policymaking continues to be a contentious issue. Concerns persist about the potential for wealthy donors, corporations, and powerful interest groups to have an outsized impact on shaping party agendas and policy priorities. Efforts are also underway to engage younger voters and increase overall civic participation, as voter apathy and disillusionment with the political process remain challenges. Parties and advocacy groups are exploring new ways to connect with and mobilize the youth vote, recognizing the importance of this demographic in shaping the future of American politics. The development of American political parties has been a complex and evolving process, marked by the rise and fall of various factions, the solidification of the current two-party system, and ongoing debates about the role and influence of these organizations in a healthy democracy. While the Democratic and Republican parties have dominated the political landscape for over a century and a half, the challenges and dynamics they face continue to shape the future of American politics and governance.